Hey there. It's a new episode of the Spiritual Spiral podcast coming your way soon. And, I recorded this a few days ago and edited it. I always have a hard time saying those two words back to back. But then, of course, I was sort of ruminating about this episode before I released it out into the world. And I sort of came to this epiphany today after listening to a moment of a podcast and then had this experience. And really, today's episode, it's about becoming aware of the things, lack of a better word, in the world that ultimately don't make you feel good. And then, what are you going to do with them? What are you going to do with that? I'm not suggesting that you never go outside and you never look at your phone, you never scroll and you don't look at YouTube. But if you are going to do these things collectively, how are they impacting your mood, your decision making, your confidence? I'm just going to give you an anecdote and then I'm going to play you a clip from a Mark Maron podcast. So I'm shooting a music video in the next couple weeks, and I'm kind of wanting to explore some new clothing items, maybe wear something different for a music video. And so I go online, and there's this store called Crossroads, and it's a thrift store. Because I don't want to spend, hundreds of dollars on, I have pretty good taste, but unfortunately a lot of the designers that I like are very expensive. So I don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on a shirt, on a couple shirts. So I go online, I check out Crossroads. It's on Melrose. And the reviews are just, they're terrible. I went to check the reviews to see if, people are going to say, oh yeah, great selection, great clothes. Reviews are terrible. I'm like, fuck it. I'm going to go there anyway and check it out. I go there today. And I have this delightful experience. And the salespeople are nice. The clothes are really inexpensive. I got out of there spending less than $100 on 4 shirts. And the salespeople are great. It's clean. It's really easy to navigate. I speak to the saleswoman as I'm leaving, and she was so pleasant and nice. And she's like, wow, it looks like you got some great stuff here. And I say, well, it's funny, but I almost thought about not coming here. And she's like, oh my God, why not? And I say, well, it's because I looked at the reviews online. And she's like, oh my God, do we have bad reviews? I go, pretend I didn't even say it. Pretend I didn't even mention it. So I'm going to go online and write a great review. But it did really make me think about how my decision making and my confidence level can be so easily swayed and distracted or sort of can so easily be swayed or turned into this sort of doubtful state of mind by what I read or by what I watch. And that's what this episode is about. It's like, how easily is your confidence or your view of the world impacted by watching the news? How is your ability to trust your own decision about your body impacted by what doctors may tell you? I mean, this really is, I don't know if it's just getting older. It's about raising the stakes here, wanting to make the most of my time here. But this episode is about, and I guess this season of the podcast is about not letting the world make decisions for you, or for me in this case, not allowing what the world thinks or what other people think about places or what the news wants me to believe about something. Let me experience it on my own. And so then let me play you this quick clip of the Mark Maron podcast. I didn't even end up listening to it. I wasn't really that into it, but I found the intro of the podcast with Anna Akana to be so interesting. Do you want to be somebody who is stuck in the mud forever? Are you living, or is your brand or are your relationships based on you behaving a particular way? Or do you want to be like Anna and really try to grow and get out of the mud? Get out of your glass half empty view of the world. Get out of your anxiety. This is an incredible intro, and it really shows the difference between somebody who is stuck. And it's not that this person hasn't tried to work on it. It's just, it benefits one's view of the world, relationships, to sort of stay in this pattern of, I'm stuck, I can't get through this. Listen to this clip, and then on to the show.
Yeah, no, I feel like being on location is such a reprieve sometimes, because then you don't have to worry about the cats. There's nothing you can do. There's like a sort of I'm not in control anymore because that's over there.
I know, but even though that's very sober.
Yeah.
And I think in my better moments, if I work that muscle, I can work it, but my brain doesn't want to.
I think it's about time you conquered your brain.
Yeah.
You're old enough now. Like,
I'm old.
What else you got to do? Do it.
AF.
Yeah, work on it.
I do work on it.
Do some mirror work.
What's mirror work?
Mirror work is when it sounds so fucking kitschy, but it's like when you look in the mirror and you do affirmations of the things you want to believe.
And so what's your manifestation rate?
Oh,
like 80%?
I don't know. I don't do the math on it, but so far I think it's good.
I don't know, man.
Do you want to be resigned in this state of despair, woe is me, anxiety? Is that fun for you? Like, I don't have the answers here. I'm certainly have my moments of despair and doubts and insecurities. I put so much time and effort into my craft and music, and then a lot of times it's like the world just doesn't really give a damn, and that certainly kind of can affect me and my psychology and my state of mind. But it's like, listen to the difference between Anna and Mark. Anna's all excited about mirror work, and it's like, dude, Mark, you're 60 years old. Isn't it time to really tackle your brain? And it was such an interesting dichotomy, such an interesting difference between the two. And one wants to change, and one is like, I don't know. So anyway, on to today's episode, Spiritual Spiral Podcast. Stoked you're listening. Been having a lot of listens in Europe, I see online, so I appreciate you checking out the show. I just felt inspired to record a brief intro before today's episode. Enjoy. Thanks again for listening and supporting the show. Here we go. Season 5, Spiritual Spiral Podcast. Feeling good. Hope you're doing well. I am, of course, Eddie Cohn. Pretty brief episode today. This is sort of a continuation podcast from the one I recorded where I was talking about the impact the news may have on your psychological makeup inside your mind or your body. And I just listened to this amazing podcast with Mark Maron where he's speaking to Shalom Auslander. It's a powerful podcast, and I felt like I had to play a few clips. Shalom is a novelist. He's been living in a world of feh. What that Yiddish word means and why Shalom believes it's an organizing idea that's being forced on human beings, particular Jews, for thousands of years. Shalom and Mark talk about breaking the cycle of feh, how Shalom did so by completely breaking away from his family, and why the nonstop news cycle is one of the biggest causes of collective misery. So I want to play a few clips. I found it so ironic and interesting that this podcast came out this last week. Beyond myself, I just started to think about if you're around people that watch the news or watch YouTube all day or play video games all day, how does that impact the rest of their day? How does that impact the relationships that they are involved with every day. And just this idea of, look, if I don't have a good night's sleep, I don't function as well. I react differently. I feel like I'm short-tempered if I don't sleep well. So then if I'm watching even 10 minutes of the news in my free time, what is that doing to my psyche? I mean, this is a trickle-down effect in the sense that we are all interrelated. You know, there's this guy that I go to this new swimming pool by my place here, and most everybody's really pleasant. But whenever I swim, and I'm not the fastest swimmer, but I'm pretty fast, so I'm sort of in one of the lanes that's closest to the fastest lane. And it feels like no matter when I go there, he's always there. And there is such an intensity to him. If I happen to get the wall and he's there maybe resting or taking a break, I stand up and before I can say anything, he just says, just go. And if I see him at another place in the pool, just go ahead. And he's sort of like yelling at me. And I've noticed it's not just me. He says that to everybody. There is such an intensity to him. And it does affect my anxiety in this weird sort of way. And I know a lot of people could say, oh, you just get over it. But I think if you are sort of sensitive or get impacted by other people's emotions, the world is a overwhelming place to live. It does raise the stakes. It raises the level of anxiety. And again, I'm not suggesting that you become a hermit and just, stay inside all day. But it is something that I have been asking myself over the last few years about two areas I've been asking myself about. How does the medical field impact my psychology, my level of confidence in my own body, and how does the news impact my view of the world? And if I can stop relying on those two areas, which I think is actually a healthy place to be, how does that improve my overall health? Through my own experience over the last few years, less reliance on the medical field, less reliance on using my free time to watch the news. It does feel like if I rely less on those two areas, it does foster more growth, more creativity, more thoughtfulness, better sleep. So much good can come from a state of mind that is relaxed, mild or soothing, because from that space, I think beautiful things can happen. And it's interesting as I play these clips for you. Mark Maron, he sort of seems like he's stuck. And again, to my earlier point from previous podcast, if your brand or if you're profiting from living in a particular state of mind, or if your life is sort of there's this pattern, whether it's in relationships with certain family members or your partner or friends, if you sort of fit this mold, or if you behave in a way that people expect you to behave, or if you're making money off of a particular way that you look at the world, then how can you possibly change? Like, it feels like when they're talking about the media, when they're talking about anxiety in the world, it feels like Shalom wants to, they both notice the problem, but Shalom wants to do something about it. Whereas Mark is sort of stuck in the cycle of, well, this is just how it is, and this is how I am, and nothing's going to change. So let's listen together. I'll share some thoughts. I'm also going to play a clip at the end of the podcast where they talk a little bit about the medical field and how that also is sort of just this merry-go-round of anxiety. But I just found it ironic and interesting, and I'm not trying to self-defend my point of view, but I think they articulate very well, and I think it's really important for us all to think about what we're ingesting every day. So here you go. First clip.
I know, if I get together with a friend and they're in a really foul mood, I'm pretty sure they were reading whatever beforehand, something,
Yeah.
The Hill, Drudge,
Yeah.
CNN, whatever, and they're just feeling shitty because
Yeah.
the day was kind of okay.
Yeah.
Like it really fucks your heads up.
No,
I
I know.
It fucks kids up.
I've been doing material about it. I talk about that. It's impossible to have a good day anymore because as soon as you look at your phone, you're like, oh, fuck.
Right.
But then I said, but I didn't realize you could change the settings on your newsfeed. I had mine set to panic.
Yeah.
If you set it to, like celebrities and health, it's a little easier.
Even then, it makes me want to kill myself. Even then, I don't want to know what Paul Rudd's doing. I don't give a fuck. I don't give
a fuck, but it's a little lighter.
It is until they start talking, and then they mention a political thing, and now it's like, oh, I should go find out what that political thing is, and now I'm fucking in it, and I give up.
Well, I've kind of gotten that monster under control. Now the scrolling thing is a little problematic.
Yeah.
They're watching reels.
Because it's endless.
But it's also, it can become your primary emotional partner.
Mm-hmm.
In that you don't know how much time is going by, and because of the nature of how these technologies design this stuff, it's kind of like crack. They know the buttons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like before you even get out of bed, you've cried twice and you're exhausted.
Right.
It's sort of this sense of 6 degrees of separation. Your mood, your view of the world will affect the people around you. It will affect the harmony, the balance, and the people that you come across every day. That guy in the swimming pool, although I do enjoy my swims, there is sort of this level of anxiety when I'm around him, and I try to avoid him as much as I can, but the energy that you take in ends up releasing out into the world. And it is about us really sort of leveling up here and deciding, do we care? Do we care? Are we even aware of the state of mind that we are in before we watch the news, read about the news, and then when we're done with it? Or are we sort of in this state of panic all the time that we don't even know what it feels like anymore to be relaxed? And he talks really briefly here. I'm going to play another clip also about this idea of social media. Even if you're a well-adjusted, pretty confident person, just spending a moment, on social media, it really can sort of tweak your head. And I'm going to talk about this great chat that that Joe Rogan had with Chris Robinson. I'll record that podcast in the next few days. But it's just this sort of deep dive into artistry and sort of this sensitive, wholesome place that we are sort of creating from, and how it can be torpedoed by just 2 minutes on Instagram, by 30 seconds. So let me play you this clip again of Shalom Ostlander on the Mark Maron show.
I know, like, my kids are pretty well adjusted, and if they're suddenly in a shitty mood, it's because my oldest son, who plays bass, saw some kid who is 7 and has a connected father, and he's going on a world tour. So now he feels shitty about everything he's done. Or my younger son's a painter, and this guy had a showing at a gallery, and now he sucks. And it's all this stuff that's just, I know there's good in it. Like, again, both of them learned a lot of their skills off of YouTube. There's some positive stuff to this. But I'm not sure how, but it's like the Bible. There's some good stuff. Yeah. Right? It's not all evil. There's some good.
Which parts do you like?
The menu.
Yeah.
There's occasionally, if you dig deep enough, you find a good life point. For everything, there's a season. Okay, great. Yeah, that makes sense.
Let's write a song.
Yeah, exactly. There's some decent stuff.
Sure.
But I can't separate it from all the awful shit.
I just related to that a lot because I'm sort of in this really great space of releasing music every couple months. I've got a bunch of new songs I'm writing. I'm getting really, really good at the guitar. Like, no, I'm not Eddie Van Halen, and I'm not, some virtuoso like him, but I'm doing things on the guitar that I've never done before. But then I can go on to social media or YouTube and watch some guy who's like half my age doing these crazy licks, and I'm suddenly like, man, I got a long way to go. And is it our natural instinct to compare? Like, I guess my reaction maybe should have been, boy, that guy's a great guitar player. But there is this sort of, and maybe it's narcissism, maybe it's selfishness, but there is this sort of innate quality, I think, in a lot of us where we instantly take what we've seen and bring it inward. And I guess when I'm around my friends, if I hear good things about them when I'm at dinner, I'm certainly really happy for them and showering them with compliments, blandishments, and telling them great job. And I don't seem to take it personally in any sort of way. But it's something about staring at somebody that I don't know, or I don't know anything about them whatsoever. If they're doing something, it does sort of make me then think about myself. And maybe it's because I have no relationship with this person on YouTube or Instagram. I have no conception of context. So I just sort of personalize it. Back to my point about the news. There's this great dialogue on this podcast where they talk about Wolf Blitzer, the guy on CNN. He's this reporter, and I've known him for 30 plus years. He's just always there sharing the news. And so I had to share this clip with you.
I got out here and I stopped to put gas in my car. And fucking, there's a screen on the pump with Wolf Blitzer on it telling me about who got bombed. I'm like, can you just shut the fuck up for one fucking minute, you ghoul? And by the way, you live in like some fucking mansion. This has paid off extremely well for you. When I add this line in the book that it's the best of times for people telling us it's the worst of times.
That thing you said about going outside reminds me of an old Bill Hicks bit, where he's watching CNN. It's just war, famine, destruction, and that was the only thing on. At that time, it was the only 24 hours. And then he'd open the door and you're like, crickets.
Now here's Bill with the weather.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, it's like, this is exactly my point from last, a couple podcasts ago. What you're looking at on television, Instagram is not a reality. It's creating all this tension and anxiety, and it's creating all these stories inside of your head that maybe actually don't even exist. What is entertaining about my street today that is newsworthy? People getting things done. I worked today and I'm recording a podcast, and after this, I'm going to pick up my guitar and work on some music, and I'm going to have dinner. And I'm watching this show Hacks on HBO Max that I think is really funny. Is any of that newsworthy? Absolutely not. It's pretty mundane and boring. I mean, I'm enjoying my day, but is it worth sharing that on CNN? Absolutely not. I mean, first of all, yeah, of course it's mundane and boring, but it does not fit into that explosiveness that CNN is yearning for, is counting on to scare the living daylights out of you. And then it feels like people then are so used to absorbing that they start yearning for it and jonesing for it, and it's an addiction. It's pretty fucked up, and I just found this is a great podcast. This is a great podcast, not the one that you're listening to right now, the one that Mark has with Shalom. I mean, Mark has these pretty large narcissistic qualities where he just talks ad nauseum about himself and makes everything about himself. But I thought this was a great chat. So definitely I recommend it. I do want to play one more clip where they're briefly talking about health. And that's sort of the other purveyor of fear and anxiety in the world. What, and I guess that's sort of the point of Shalom's latest book that I think I'm going to check out. He apparently he's a very similar writer to David Sedaris. I've never heard of him before, but there is this, whether it's history books or how you're raised or the medical field or news, these are all purveyors of doom. They want you to feel bad about yourself. The idea that you should be enjoying your life is this foreign concept. Like, how dare you have a good day? And we obviously, before you hear this clip, there's been tragedies around addiction to fentanyl, and obviously the addiction around drugs, hard drugs, cocaine, heroin, meth. We've had these addictive qualities in our bodies, in our minds for centuries. Alcoholism, but what video games and Instagram and social media and the news and having access to so much information on the internet, it has sort of brought out the worst in all of us. Like, we used to think, addiction was just, addicted to alcoholism. That was bad, or, addiction to drugs. But I guess we're all potentially addicts. And so we have all these new levels and layers of addiction. And sure, one could say that it's not as extreme to be addicted to the internet or addicted to the news as one being addicted to meth. But they're all interrelated. They're all making us feel potentially bad about ourselves, potentially giving us less sleep, making us feel insecure, making us feel toxic energy, making us not trust ourselves. Even the medical field is out there. I had dinner with some friends this last weekend. Sometimes I'm nervous to bring up my perspective on how I feel about medicine and how they're just purveyors of death and destruction and mental anxiety. But they wholeheartedly agreed with me. One of their fathers refuses to go to the doctor, and then another friend of mine. It's like, is it really? Who does it benefit if cancer is cured? Like, it's going to benefit the population, but think about the billion-dollar industry that's involved, the healthcare industry. That's a very dark rabbit hole here, but it does feel like a certain level of medicine wants us to be chronically sick forever. So let me play you this last clip, and I'll let you go.
I hadn't spoken to my brother in a very long time as well. And then out of the blue, I got an email and it was like, more or less, it was like, hey, I know it's been a long time. Dad's got polyps in his ass and I have polyps in my ass. You might want to get your ass checked. Love to Orly and the boys. And I was like, okay.
It's the best email ever.
So I go to my doctor. I'm in panic.
Yeah.
And she's like, what is it? I'm like, my dad's got polyps in his ass, and they're precancerous. And she says, well, everything's precancerous.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to, okay, that was helpful. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to hold on to that. And then she's like, we're going to get you a colonoscopy. And I was like, oh, fuck, she really thinks something's wrong.
No, he's supposed
And she's like, no, I just know you, and you're going to be a lot more stressed out if we don't do a colonoscopy than if we do.
Yeah.
I really related to that because it's like, if you don't go through the process of all these tests and finding out what could be wrong, we don't trust that everything is okay. Like, I've really begun. I guess last anecdote here. I was watching this video on YouTube from this doctor, this female physician, who was basically calling out the medical field because many years ago, this is when the PSA test was started to monitor men's prostate PSA levels. They decided that a particular number, I forget if it's like 3, 4, 5, no matter what, you should get a biopsy. But it hasn't been, and then we come to find out that those biopsies obviously cost money, and it really helps the medical field, and it gives them, obviously money, and they make profit. But it also opens up the rabbit hole of men to start worrying about their PSA levels, and the biopsy is obviously a very uncomfortable experience. And then she goes on to say, well, that the biopsy can actually cause more problems than if you don't get the biopsy done. And then these tests get people to start thinking about things that they normally wouldn't think about. There's no context. There's no, how do you feel? Do you just sort of compare or do you relate your body not to how you feel, but to a blood number or a blood result? And if you never even went to the doctor once, would that actually be better for your psyche? I have some friends that never go to the doctor, and they're in their 50s. I used to go to the doctor a couple times a year. Now I go just once a year for some yearly blood work. I feel like what's a good middle ground? But I sort of am getting further and further to the point where does it even make sense to go to the doctor? Why did this anxiety about our health, where did that come from? Where did we learn to not have trust in our own bodies? And, for me, my lineage and my family has so much anxiety. And I think when you do, and Mark, I relate a lot to Mark's experience because his dad is a doctor. And I think when you do have a doctor in the family, on one hand, that could sort of make you feel good and confident because it does feel good to sort of run things by somebody in the family, but it can also really raise a lot of anxiety levels and make you think about everything. It's like, where does our lack of trust come from in our bodies, in our own health, in managing our health? So this podcast today, when I was listening to Mark talk to Shalom, it made me think about the news. Why do we have this need to watch such inflammatory information? Why do we feel like it helps us? And we say, I want to be in the know. I don't want to be ignorant. Yeah, sure. But maybe be knowledgeable about something else that has nothing to do with current events. And then why are we lacking trust when it comes to our own bodies and our own health? I was feeling really tense the other day, and I went to my acupuncturist, and about an hour and a half later, I got out of there, and I felt so much more relaxed. I felt calm and balanced, and I felt like a completely different person. I guess, I don't know, maybe more and more people are sort of coming to terms with this idea that these sort of institutions that have been in place for years, whether it's news, pharmaceuticals, the medical field, maybe these systems that have been in place, maybe we don't have to rely on them as much as we used to. Maybe there are alternatives. So yeah, that's today's show. I felt really less alone after listening to that podcast with Mark and Shalom. I'm going to go out and buy some of Shalom's books. I'm really curious to read about his perspective. I guess he's written a couple memoirs, so I'm very interested in checking them out. I guess again, why the desire to watch the news? How is it making you feel? And why do you, maybe this is you, maybe it isn't you, but if you don't trust your own body or your own health, why? Where does that come from? And what can you do to start to feel more confident about your own body's ability to take care of itself? As my cat Leo just walks in, he's like, "Dad, come on, I want some attention." So I'll leave you with that. Leo, we're gonna get out of here. I knew it was a matter of time before one of the cats walked into the studio. You know where to find me on social, at Eddie Cohn or the Spiritual Spiral Podcast. We are in the midst of season 5. We're about halfway through the season. And please head over to iTunes, write a review, give the show a 5-star. Maybe share the show with your friends. Leo says hi. And I'll be back soon. with a discussion about music and the arts and some thoughts after listening to Chris Robinson on a podcast. So I'll be back soon. As always, thanks for listening and supporting, being a part. Leo, just trying to say goodbye. Thanks for being a part of the show. Thanks for supporting the Downward Facing Spiritual Spiral podcast.